Welcome to the Family Office Success Podcast, where we explore the strategies, the insights, and the best practices that help families and their advisors build and manage successful family offices. I am your host, Christi Van Rite, and each episode, we dive into the key elements of running a family office. Whether you're a family looking to structure your advisory team for long-term success, or you're a professional managing the complexities of a multi-generational enterprise. From financial oversight and operational efficiency to selecting the right advisors and creating a lasting legacy, this podcast is here to provide practical guidance and expert perspectives. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Family Office Success Podcast, where we talk all things family office. I am Christi Van Rite. I'm the host, and today we are talking about something a little different. We are talking about not your portfolio, not a niche advisory necessarily, not your estate plan, not your governance structure. We're talking about you. We are talking about your health, your energy, your capacity to actually lead, to make decisions, and to show up for the people who depend on you. It's often seen that the least attention is put on what actually matters most in our life, which is our health. And it's the one thing that everyone else depends on. The matriarch and the patriarch of the family who are making decisions, they're holding everything together, but yet if their health isn't being held together or they're not being proactive about it, things tend to go sideways in ways that are not helpful when you are that decision maker. So my guest today has spent 25 years in medicine. What he's built is unlike anything else in traditional healthcare. Dr. Tracy Gapin is the founder of Peak Launch, a precision performance medicine platform. And he works specifically with high-performing leaders, i.e. you, who feel like they've lost their edge, even when their labs say everything is fine. He is a TEDx speaker, best-selling author, and someone that I think that you are genuinely going to enjoy hearing from. So, Dr. Gapin, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much. What an intro. Glad to be with you today.
Well, every bit of it is true. So can you give us a little bit more about your background and what led you to focus on performance and longevity the way that you do today?
Sure. Yeah. So I like to joke I am a recovering urologist. So after 25 years in traditional medicine running a very busy surgical urology practice, I left. And why did I leave? Well, I hit a wall about halfway through that career where I was not even burned out. I hit a point where I knew I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. I was 30 pounds overweight. I was stressed out, not sleeping well, not taking care of myself. You know, I was so focused on my patients and my career that I had neglected my own health, and it caught up with me. I was 40 years old. My wife and I had our first kid on the way, and I knew something had to change. And I went to a concierge doc here in town, one of my colleagues, and his only answer for me was just to put me on a statin, a cholesterol medication. That's all he had. And here I was as the men's health expert, as the urologist, and I didn't really know what the heck to do either, but I knew I needed to really turn things around for myself. And so I went back to school and I started studying functional medicine and epigenetics and lifestyle medicine and hormones and peptides and really the science around optimization and longevity and performance. And with that, I was able to turn my own health around and really found a passion for medicine that I'd even never had before. And I saw a new path forward. And I saw that we have our acute care system, which is great when you have a heart attack, a kidney stone, cancer. It's there for you to fix that problem. But most of the leaders are just like I was 15 years ago. You are trying to hold it all together. You're trying to run a business. You're trying to be a leader, but yet there are things happening under the surface you don't even realize. And that's what I focus on now. I focus on performance. I focus on helping leaders really reach their full capacity. And it starts by taking a very different approach than what our traditional healthcare system has put on the table for us.
So let's talk about that. Personally, I am a huge proponent of functional medicine. I see a functional medicine physician and it has changed. It's changed my life in lots and lots of ways. So I'm incredibly thankful that this exists inside well, not exactly inside of our medical system, but as a system that people can reach out to. So let's pull on that. What does that look like for you? And then for someone who hasn't really heard about this functional medicine approach, what do they assume and what do they get wrong?
Yeah, great question. And there's this real dichotomy that has developed between traditional medicine, which is longstanding, it's supposedly trusted, it's all about evidence-based medicine. And unfortunately, it's very much driven by acute care treatment of an illness symptoms, and it's typically with pharmaceuticals. And I don't think that's ill intent. A lot of people like to say doctors are trying to make money off of prescribing medications. We don't make money off prescribing medications. How doctors really make money in the real traditional world is volume, unfortunately. Reimbursement has been cut and cut and cut, and the only way for doctors to really survive is to increase their volume. And so you become a rat on a wheel. And so now you're the patient, and that doctor's just trying to get you treated out the door, move on. And so that doctor doesn't have time to spend a half an hour talking to you about your sleep and your hormones and your fitness, et cetera, and microbiome stuff that controls everything, all this other science that matters. No, they're going to look at the labs, which are baseline, superficial, worthless labs, I'll submit, and then give you prescription medication and move on to the next because there's just no time to focus on higher level stuff and learn new stuff. Fascinating, Christi. A recent study from the NIH showed that most doctors are 17 years behind the science. 17 years. Because we don't have time to learn the new stuff. And
because
so
you have a volume problem.
There you go.
Yeah.
In my career, Christi, when I was a urologist running a very busy practice, seeing men and women, bread and butter kidney stones and UTIs and blood in the urine, bladder cancer, prostate cancer, I would have 6 minutes with you before I had to move on to the next patient. What the heck can I really accomplish in 6 minutes? And so the patient suffers, and that's really, I believe, a symptom of the bigger problem, and that is that traditional medicine is great for treating symptoms, illness, disease, but what we focus on, precision performance medicine, is optimization, performance. How can I show up and be the leader that I need to be? How can I be a present and engaged leader for my team, an employer in the community, but then at the end of the day, still be the husband or wife or father or mother that I need to be at home as well. And that's performance at a whole different level.
Yeah, I figured out very quickly whenever I got that first blood draw with my new doc. And I think there were 9 vials. And I was like, is this okay? And the phlebotomist assured me, she was like, no, you're one short of where we would stop. Versus the herb or something like that. I don't remember exactly. But I remember laughing because usually it's 1 or 2. And I was like, oh, we're going to keep going. And you got lots of colors in here. And big difference whenever you're reading that chart and it says in between the lines and you're like, yeah, it is, but it's not really. Very interesting.
A big problem. Yeah. So number one, most doctors in traditional medicine, we're taught the basic superficial labs that don't tell you anything other than if you're sick or not. They're not really helpful unless you're having a real problem. All these other tests that are available that are out there help you really understand at a deeper level how your body's working. Hormones, markers of inflammation, blood sugar control, cardiovascular health, micronutrient levels, these key markers that we need to be looking at. And then you can look at the reference ranges of the labs that are being checked. And like you said, you have this ridiculous reference range that's not optimal. It's not necessarily where you're supposed to be or need to be. It's the average of the population. It's the crummy average of the population, most of whom are sick. And you're just being told that you're fine, you're normal, your labs look fine, when wrong reference ranges, wrong tests to begin with.
There you go. Quite frankly, I think we could probably just leave it with that. Can't just trust the guidelines. But let's continue because I'm interested in your thoughts on why do most high performers, or anybody for that matter, not just a high performer, but why do we wait? Why do we tend to wait until something is wrong before we take action? What do you think?
Love the question. I love it. The decline is so subtle, Christi. Most of the leaders that we work with and most leaders in your community, they're successful, they're driven, they have a business, they've created wealth and all the surface, everything looks great. But they don't even realize that under the surface that they're not even close to operating at their full capacity, their full potential. And it's not from a lack of motivation or discipline or desire, not knowledge. It's that they don't even realize what's happening. And it's under the surface. It's blind spots, I call them. And they're holding you back, and they're creating a gap between where you are and where you could be. And most people don't even realize it's happening because it's so subtle and because we are masters of adaptation, right? We compensate, we adapt.
Absolutely.
And, every day your energy is a little bit lower. It's just a little bit, I'm tired, I'm busy, it's okay, I didn't sleep well, but you brush it off and you keep moving. But in fact, there are real things happening under the surface that if you would just stop and look under the surface, realize those problems, you can fix them and alter reality. You could change your, and I have the paradigm, the way I see it, Christi, is your biology, how everything's working on the inside, drives your state. Okay. And your state is how you feel, your energy, your focus, your drive, your resilience. And that really affects your identity, how you show up every day. And that's what affects your performance. And so people are looking at ways of, performance boosting, of taking this magic peptide or doing this magic supplement that I heard about, or this incredible new diet plan, instead of looking at the biology that drives it all and how can we impact that. And that's what I think it's really all about.
When you're thinking about health differently, I think from my perspective, what I've learned to think, how I've learned to think about health over the last 5 or 6 years as I've gone through my own journey, it's more of like it's an asset. Because if I'm not performing and I'm not functioning at my highest level, then my team feels it. Our families feel, anybody that I am communicating or working with, whether they notice it in the moment or it's just a little lag here or there. Oh, wait, I can't find hold on, I'm thinking about a word. Just give me a minute, I'll get there. Like those kinds of things, I think in the moment, like you said, you just sort of brush them off. But the reality is we are the asset for those of us who are the entrepreneurs, the ones that are trying to lead the teams and get things done in the world. It makes a difference if your health is not optimized. So thinking about it from an asset perspective, what does it mean to treat your health as an asset and something that you are actively managing and investing in?
Love the question, because I really think of it as either, an asset or a liability when it comes to your health. And it does drive everything downstream. Yeah, it affects how you show up. It affects your energy for your team. It affects the way you lead, your confidence. It affects the way you show up on stage or in a podcast or any part of your life. We use the word performance almost in excess, but what it really means is how you show up. And I think that everything is affected by your health. And so what does that really mean? Well, I think it starts with testing, find what are the issues that may be holding me back. What are the things that are doing great and what are the things that aren't? I'll give you a great parallel that maybe will put this into perspective. Your business. You think about your business and think of all the metrics, the KPIs that you're looking at on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, right? We run ours through EOS. You have your quarterly rocks and you have your scorecard every week and you have all these numbers you're looking at. What do you do for your health? What do you do when it comes to measuring your health and your performance and how your body and your biology is working? And that's why I'm a huge proponent of test, don't guess. You think you're fine, but I'll respectfully submit you're probably not. You don't even realize how far you've fallen because you just compensated. And we have this hormone, our stress hormone called cortisol. And cortisol is not a bad hormone, but it's important to have proper balance. What happens when we're not functioning at a good enough level, cortisol kicks in, our stress hormone. When you don't sleep well, your cortisol is super high, and that's what gets you through. And in time, excess cortisol breaks down your body, breaks down your muscle, breaks down your neurotransmitters for your brain, your hormones, your gut. It crushes everything in your body, that cortisol excess, and we don't even realize it's happening. And so rather than trying to take boosters and supplements and peptides and magic stuff that may be okay in the right context, what we really need to do is look at the underlying systems that need attention first.
That's really interesting, that almost a foundational or a baseline, reducing your stress levels, reducing your cortisol could actually throw a whole lot of other things. Well, having a high cortisol level can throw a whole lot of things out of whack, and then reducing it can help bring them back.
That's right.
Such a simple Such a simple
Yes.
thing, and yet traditional medicine doesn't really talk about, let's talk about lowering your cortisol levels and how we would do that. How do you do that? How do you lower your cortisol levels?
Yeah. And first of all, you can actually measure it. So it's a simple saliva sample. You do 4 spots throughout the day, and you can measure your cortisol. Traditional medicine never looks at it, but it's a incredibly effective way at looking at your internal stress levels. And I want to clarify, most listeners are probably going to say, I'm not stressed. I'll skip this part. Nonsense. Okay, nonsense. You are stressed, and stress isn't bad, but it's all about balance. Are you able to turn it off? And we're measuring really resilience. How much are you balancing stress with recovery, right? And that's what cortisol is looking at. But stress also comes from things like poor sleep. So you ask, how do you fix it? The first thing you can do is improve your sleep quality. Focus on ways of optimizing sleep. The best time to repair and recover your body is when you're sleeping. And most of us either intentionally neglect it or without realizing it are crushing our sleep. And so that's a big part of it. Balancing stress with recovery. A lot of people I work with, they overtrain. In the gym, more is not always better. Sometimes too much of a good thing can be harmful for you, stuff like that. Microbiome issues. There's a lot of, focus now on the fact that the microbiome, your gut, controls everything. It controls almost everything happening in your body is in some way directed by the microbes. It's called the microbiome, all the organisms in your gut. And affecting that can actually change how you focus, your energy, your ability. Sometimes weight loss is because of your gut. And so that may be causing stress in your system as well. So stress is not just, I got to meditate. There's a lot of other things that we look at when it comes to how do we mitigate the effects of stress.
Interesting. So traditional meditation, though, is that ever on the, hey, maybe you ought to sit down?
Amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's actually a real science. I'm a scientist. I'm a doctor by background. And so when I first got into this space, initially I thought, it's a little woo for me. I don't know. But there's actually real published science on the fact that meditation changes genetic expression. It changes the way your genes work and function. And so, yes, so there is real science behind the power of meditation, mindfulness, breathing exercises, and I'll really put out there gratitude. I'm a huge believer in the power of active gratitude on a daily basis. It's so important. Yeah. So yes, I think it's a big part of it. A big part of reducing your stress levels, whether it's psychological stress or other, is through stuff like that.
So side question, because I think you have an Oura ring on. Maybe that's different. But yeah, for all of us who have Oura rings and it tells us our resilience or our stress levels, does it actually, because I've looked at mine and I'm like, it's a Saturday and I am feeling good. Now, I'm at a high altitude. My heart rate is higher than it, my O2 is probably a little lower than normal than if I am at sea level. How do our rings, our watches, how are they factoring in some of those things? Because you mentioned a saliva test, which makes sense. And how much can we really depend on some of our tech?
Yeah. So there's actually a great study that just came out recently. And if you go to a Reddit channel, Quantified Self, I think, has this published study there on all the wearables and looking at different factors. So you can, look at what's the best wearable for deep sleep, for activity, for stress, et cetera. And so for this part, HRV, or heart rate variability, is what you're talking about, is a surrogate for stress, right? Heart rate variability for the listener is simply the variation in your heartbeat from one beat to the next. So when your pulse is, let's say your pulse is 70, it's not actually really consistently 70 beats per minute. It may be 70.01, 69.97, 70.04. It'll vary beat to beat. That variation is the definition of heart rate variability. The higher your HRV, or heart rate variability, that means that your body is rested, recovered, it's resilient. You have a dynamic capacity to deal with any change that comes your way. And that's why your heartbeat is varying. Every microsecond is varying by the environment. Okay, that's a dynamically recovered state, high heart rate variability. When your system is stressed, when you're overtrained, when you're sick, when you haven't slept well, when you've had alcohol, toxins, gut issues, low hormones, all these stressors to your system, your heart rate variability is low. You're in a stress state. Your body is not able to handle changes that come up. And so your HRV is very low. And so we could use that as barometer for a surrogate for our internal stress levels. Okay, so that's HRV.
Okay.
The problem is what you're talking about, the Apple Watch. You
Yeah.
can use for speed or other and trackers and stuff like that. You have the Aura Ring, all these other devices, Whoop, etc. Garmin. When you're looking at HRV and you're tracking it like they're doing with these devices, what it's doing is looking at all day long and averaging it.
Okay.
But the problem is, today you do a heavy leg day. Tomorrow you do a light zone 2 walking training day. Every day varies what you eat, your activity, again, work day versus weekend kind of stuff if you're traveling. And so that's not a very accurate way to look at HRV if you're looking at the whole day. What you want to look at is in a rested state, same time of day every day, and compare apples to apples. The way you do that is actually by measuring it one single time of day. Typically, when you first wake up in the morning, 6 a.m., you wake up, a chest strap has been shown to be the most accurate way to look at heart rate variability. And Morpheus or Polar H10 are the two straps out there that are the best ones by far.
Okay.
You sit on the couch in a rested state. You put on the strap. It connects to your phone. 2.5 minute reading, and it'll give you your number for the day, your HRV recording for the day. All right. Now, an HRV number by itself is not good or bad. You don't want to compare it to someone else and who's better, who's worse.
Okay.
It's looking at trends over time. So you look at Christi's HRV over the last week and what was it every single day and look for trends. So for example, let's say your HRV was 52, which is pretty good. 50 is a good number, I would say, for average most people. Okay. 52, 53, 51, 49, 52, 37. You're like, what the heck happened? Yeah, so now you can use that information. What happened? Oh, you know what? I went out with my husband and I had 2 glasses of wine last night. Holy cow. And you can start to see trends. You can start to see how your internal stress level, and that will correlate with a higher resting heart rate level as well. It'll trend with other markers of stress as well, but that's the best way to look at it. Your cortisol might be higher that day too, for example. But HRV is a good way to see, and you can understand how things you're doing on a daily basis are affecting your internal stress levels.
Interesting. Is it true that coffee raises your cortisol in the mornings?
Well, yeah, it's caffeine. So any kind of caffeine is a stimulant. So it may raise your catecholamines, your cortisol, and other hormones related to increasing your stress. Yeah, and it's a stimulant. So yes.
Well, that's unfortunate, isn't it?
Now, but in the morning, it's okay, though. I want to clarify that cortisol is high in the morning, typically, for everyone. It's high when you first wake up. And then it's supposed to decline throughout the day and be very low at night. This is why, for a lot of people, based on your genetics, you may be more or less sensitive to caffeine. This is why you don't want to be drinking caffeine, coffee, God forbid, Diet Coke or any other sort of caffeine later in the day, because those may be a stimulant and that caffeine can stick around and affect you at bedtime.
Right.
And so a cup or two of coffee in the morning is not a problem for most people.
Okay, I appreciate that reinforcement. That was going to get real sketchy for my team if you were saying I needed to cut back on the coffee in the mornings. So what are the most common issues that you're able to identify through sort of this early, I'm going to call it early adopter or being willing to have a conversation about your health before there's a crisis where you are in the ER and and you need traditional medical care?
Sure.
What are some of those things you're able to find?
Yeah, some of the big things, the biggest needle movers that we identify early are issues with hormones. So for men, you think of testosterone, of course, as the obvious hormone. And for most men, their levels are very, very low compared to where they need to be. And that's been trending low for 20, 30 years. Now we're seeing a population worldwide level decline in testosterone levels. But it's not just testosterone. It's estrogen, it's thyroid, it's progesterone, it is DHEA, nitric oxide, growth hormone, all these hormones, and they're all low in so many people. And it's a big signal that your body's missing when you don't have these hormones. And so that's the first one. And again, your doctor typically is not checking them, or when they do, they're using the wrong reference ranges and telling you that you're normal, you're fine, you're okay, when you're not. Yeah.
Right.
That's the big one.
Okay. Are there any other big ones that you find?
Yeah. So, and I want to emphasize it's men and women too. So, my passion's always been men's health, but this is for women as well. And women need testosterone and thyroid and DHEA, nitric oxide, and all these other hormones that we care about as well. It's not just about estrogen. So be sure that you're working with a forward-thinking physician who's going to do all this advanced testing beyond just the traditional estradiol. Okay. So that's a big one. Microbiome's the other big one. The gut controls everything. Doctors are not checking it. It's a simple poop test. You do it at home. You poop in this tray, you put it in a little tiny cup, send it off, and we can analyze it. Massive value from looking at the microbiome as well.
So when if you're forward thinking as the person, as the human, and you're saying, you know what, I don't know if something's wrong or not, but what's it going to hurt to go and have some tests run, to have someone like a functional medicine physician come in and look at and maybe it's just tweaking, right? Like maybe it's you're not off the charts one way or the other, but yeah, we could tweak and I bet you'll see a difference kind of thing. For those who are willing to have this conversation before a crisis happens, what are some of the things that you can actually prevent by tweaking, by catching something before it has created an issue?
Give you a great example. Bob Harper, he was the lead fitness trainer on a TV show called The Biggest Loser. It was on 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You remember that? Yeah. Some people may not remember it, but yeah, he was the epitome of good health, teaching people how to lose weight and get in shape. And he was with Jillian Michaels, I think was the other trainer on the show. Mm-hmm. Well, at age 51, Bob Harper had a massive heart attack, almost dies. How is that possible for a guy as healthy as him? If it's all about diet and exercise, how is that possible?
And
the answer is, one of the cardiovascular markers that we look at is super important. It's called Lp(a), and it looks like capital L, little p, and then little a in parentheses. Lp(a) is how it's pronounced.
Okay.
That is a subtype of LDL, and when it's elevated, it massively increases your risk of early heart disease. And if you know it, it dramatically changes what you need to be doing. 30% of the population have an elevated Lp(a) and don't even know it, and you're walking around like a ticking time bomb. So that's a big one. It's a simple blood test. Once in your life, you should get an Lp(a) checked. We could look at things like, food sensitivity testing. I'll give you a great example. One of my clients, he was a professional race car driver, came to me because his brain wasn't functioning, like decision-making around the turns. He knew something wasn't quite right. It was off. He was delayed. Well, for Marco, we found that he had, on his food sensitivities, he had massively elevated inflammatory markers with bananas and coffee. Of all things, bananas and coffee. Now, those aren't bad foods.
Right.
But for Marco, they were triggering inflammation, causing brain fog. Guess what Marco was having for breakfast every single morning with his protein shake?
Bananas and coffee.
There you go. And so we cleaned up his gut and we had him remove those two foods, bananas and coffee, just temporarily. And he told me how it was like a light switch went on and suddenly his focus improved, his reaction time improved, and everything changed. And he was a different driver. And he goes on shortly thereafter, true story, he sets a Guinness World Record for endurance racing. Crazy story. And so it's just a prime example of how the little things can be big things and your doctor's not looking at these really important things that matter.
Why do you think traditional healthcare is not, I know pharmaceuticals and insurance drive a lot of our healthcare system.
It does. Yeah.
But it would sure seem like from an insurance perspective, not pharmaceutical, but insurance perspective, they don't want to have to pay out big claims. It has baffled me why they are not on the path of true preventative medicine, not you get your annual physical and, oh yeah, okay, check, you're all good. Do you have a perspective on why traditional medicine is not picking up for the general population?
Because they're making so much money. They're making so much money they don't need to. It's all wrapped around acute care treatment. It's wrapped around, the insurance companies are making so much money right now. It's incredible. The pharmaceutical companies are making so much money right now, and prevention is not on their radar. That's not really what they care about. That doesn't make any sense to them. And so that's really the big challenge.
Gosh.
Yeah. And so, the other part of this is that a lot of people, if you teach them this stuff and teach them what to do, why don't they do what they know they're supposed to do? So let's say I work with Joe Joe's a wealth advisor, and I sit down with Joe and I go through his tests and I show him these are the things that it's showing. Based on your genetics, you should be eating this and that. Based on these tests, these are what you should be focusing on to improve your sleep quality. And giving all these instructions, Joe will go home and most of the time Joe will not do half of what I recommended. Why?
Why?
Well, it comes down to habit change. It comes down to the behavioral part of it. How do you get people to do what you know they need to do? And it comes down to creating consistency and habits and its behavior. And so a big part of this is that most people are not willing to put in the effort. They're not willing to create some consistency in their life because they don't prioritize this. When you prioritize this, when you realize how important it is, suddenly you're willing to do that. And think of how, when we're building our business, think of how much you're willing to do for your business, how much you're willing to put in and invest and sacrifice. But you neglect your health because you don't realize how important it is.
Yeah. So as part of your practice, do you try and address, look, nobody's going to change unless they want to. Bottom line, right? Like if you're not in it to win it,
right?
Congratulations, you just got a bunch of information that created a paperweight in your brain somewhere that you're not actually going to use. So is that part of what you are trying to address with your with your folks as they're coming in? Is that behavioral side as well?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. You know, as part of the Peak Launch team, we have a medical team that focuses on all the advanced, comprehensive blood testing and hormones and peptides and all the cutting edge molecules. But the more important side is the coaching team. And my functional medicine trained coaching team is focused purely on behavior change, on accountability, on consistency, and how do you get someone to do what they know they need to do. And that's really, I believe, the most important part of all, because I can prescribe all the sexy stuff, but if you're not willing to commit to real consistent habits, then you're gonna have a hard time finding success.
So how does someone find a functional medicine physician in their area? Or does it need to be in their area? Can they see you no matter where they or you are at?
Thank you. Yeah, so we work with men and women throughout the country. We work with high-performing leaders, entrepreneurs, executives, founders, those who are willing to invest, like you said, in their health, and they recognize that it could be either your greatest asset or worst liability, I like to say. But we work with people around the country, and what I really recommend, how we start, is a testing package. It's called Launch Diagnostics, and you can do it from anywhere in the country. It includes 4 things: blood testing, the microbiome we talked about, the food sensitivity we talked about, and the cortisol we talked about. So those 4 tests, you can do them all at home. And then when the results come in, we get on a Zoom call with you and we go through the results, help you understand what they mean. A lot of these companies out there are selling you labs right now, which sound great, but I can't tell you how many people have come to us and like, we have this AI generated report. I don't know what the heck, what do I do with it? How do I apply it? What's next?
Right.
And so the key part of it is helping you understand, how do you interpret it? How do you apply it? What's the next step? If you want to move forward, how do you actually fix the issues that we found? And so it's called Launch Diagnostics. You can do it anywhere in the country.
Okay. So you focus more on men's health and longevity. Do you have a counterpart for women?
Yeah, so my passion and background was men's health, but at Peak Launch, we have a men's health team and a women's health team as well. And so we work with both men and women around the country. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. What can someone expect from working with your team? In fairness, I have had varying experiences over the years with different providers. Some have been great on the front end, and yet there wasn't a lot on the back end, and some have been a little slower. So what is the experience if someone is coming to you guys?
Yeah, thanks so much. So I am obsessed with our first core value of our company, and that is a perfect client experience. I realized through my transition from traditional medicine, urology, into really leading my team here at Peak Launch, that I'm an entrepreneur who was stuck in a doctor's body for 25 years, right? And as an entrepreneur, I recognize that to run a business successfully, it's all about taking care of your client. Your client comes first, and their experience is paramount. And so everything we do is focus on how do we provide a perfect client experience. And so, we are obsessed with every little detail. I have an amazing team around me. I have a client concierge. I have a full-time employee. All she does is be there to support you. What do you need? What are your concerns? Help really triage whatever issues you may have. And then I have a medical team, coaching, concierge, pharmacy, nursing, you name it, full meal.
That's incredible. So actually, I mean, pull on that real fast. Part of your team, can you also prescribe if something comes up? I mean, do people call you when they get a cold, or, hey, we're traveling and I came back and I feel terrible? Or what does that service level look like?
We do, and we make clear that we're not primary care, but when we have high level clients, we run premium programs where we are your everything. And so when something comes up, I have clients who get COVID years ago, and we have a protocol for you. If you're sick, we're gonna be able to take care of you, but we're just not your after hours on call concierge doc in that regard. So most of our clients still keep their primary care doctor for when they're sick, but we can handle most things that come up for sure. Yeah.
Okay, good to know. A question just came to mind from an age range. If someone's listening and they're younger, where does it start making sense for someone to start paying attention to all of those things that we were talking about earlier?
Yeah. So most of the clients we work with tend to be in their 50s, maybe in their 60s, but a lot of clients now in their 30s and 40s are starting to pay attention and wake up. And I think the sooner you can recognize this stuff, the better. I have a lot of clients who will get the genetic, we run a genetics panel that really gives you your blueprint for how to live your whole life. And they'll run that on their kids, because the earlier you can know that stuff, that really sets you up your entire life. Of heart disease, for example, it doesn't start when you're 50. It starts like in your teens and when you're a child. Like it's something that happens over decades and decades. And so the earlier you can understand what your body needs, the better. And so to answer your question, most clients, 40s, 50s, 60s, but even some clients in their 30s are finding value. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. The idea that knowing even where a kiddo is at, teens or something, to understand that there's something here and that you can make a change today and not get into a series of bad habits that are exacerbating an issue that you didn't even know you had. I mean, that's really powerful to change the course of your life, potentially.
It is. And it simply takes a willingness to be proactive, to be forward thinking, and to not think you're invincible. And the younger you are, the harder that is, obviously.
What? We're not invincible when we're in our teens and 20s?
Right.
Well, Dr. Gapin, this has been such a valuable conversation. And I hope that for a lot of our listeners, health really is the thing that doesn't just live on their to-do list, but moves it to the top, and they can start making some moves and be able to check the box and really start paying attention to what they're doing and how they're living. And maybe it's just little tweaks. So,
right.
And what you've laid out today is definitely, I think, a much different, I would say, a better way to think about your health. That it's not a maintenance strategy, or it's not as maintenance and crisis level, but it's a strategy to really live by. So thank you very much again for being on the show today.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Christi.
So if you want to learn more about Dr. Gapin's work, head over to peaklaunch.com. We'll also have links in the show notes. Dr. Gapin, thank you for being here, and to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to the Family Office Success Podcast today. We hope you found this educational and helpful and motivating. And if you got something out of it, we would love if you shared it with someone in your circle who might need to hear it. So until next time.
Thank you for joining me today on the Family Office Success Podcast. I hope you found this conversation insightful and valuable as you navigate the complexities of family office services. If you're looking for more ideas or resources, or want to explore how we can support your family office or your family through services and training and strategy, connect with me on LinkedIn or visit our website at whiteriverconsultants.com, and be sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates and expert insights. And if you're ready to take your family office to the next level, consider joining our mastermind, where we can help you manage that chaos and create better outcomes for the families you serve. Until next time, I'm Christi Van Rite, and this has been the Family Office Success Podcast. Take care and keep building for the future.